let's get started. So, any questions about anything so far? Going once, going twice. Okay. So, first thing is, I gotta tell you that we're trying to set up this tour of IBM, and the vice president asked me if I could recommend any students to go with us. Okay, good, perfect.
The one up on Bailey? The Santa Teresa lab?
Somewhere by Coyote Valley?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Okay, perfect.
Is it?
Huh?
Where the cafeteria is.
I've-
That's about it.
No, nothing. Which date? I don't know. What time? I don't know, but sorry.
Okay.
But they're gonna let me know pretty soon. But yeah, it'll be nice if you can come. And I'm also gonna tell if you like also.
Yeah, I'd like to go.
Okay, so as soon as I find out what time, I'll let you know. I'll also tell the club, and if anybody's watching the video, let me know, or listening to the video.
Not that I have a control over the schedule, but I'm out of town from the 9th to the 14th of November. I imagine it'll be after that.
I hope it's before that, before the 9th.
In the next week?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, I just know that they want to go and they want me to go, and then now last thing they said is, "Oh, can you bring some students?" So it'd be awesome if you came.
Is it sure of what the labs?
IBM. I think yeah, the whole thing. We're trying to establish some kind of a partnership with them so that we can send them students who don't even have degrees. Basically, just complete a couple of classes that they want, and then just go to IBM and work for them. They call it like a other caller initiative or something like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be a good thing. So it'll be great if you came. Okay, so now that we said that, let's go back to some more Java. Week 10. And week 10 is pretty much very similar to week 9. Week 9, we learned basically how to create a window, how to associate events with that window, right? So these are some of the things that we did last time. Basically, the first step to creating a graphical user interface, or GUI, is make a window, set the size of the window, make it visible, and then associate some kind of an event with whenever you close the window. Okay, so those are some of the things that we did last time, and today we're gonna go a little further. We're gonna add several buttons, or actually at least one button more than before, some checkboxes, a text area, right? And with that knowledge, you will be able to get started on your final project. And the final project is, first of all, you can choose your own final project if you want. If you don't like the tic-tac-toe, you're welcome to do something else. Whatever it is, make sure it has a GUI. Run it by me first, and I'll be happy to let you work on that and help you with that if you like. So the first thing that we want to do today is I'm just going to look at the chapter 10 summary, Javadoc comments, document your code with Javadoc, more Javadoc. Okay, so I guess maybe I should just start with the Javadoc and then tell you the rest later. So let me start with the Javadoc. So what is Javadoc? Well, it's basically a way for you to document your code, to automate the documentation of your code using this tool that exists in the Java language called Javadoc. Okay, and basically what you have to do is you just have to format your if you have some kind of a method, right? What you do is you start the whole thing with two asterisks, right? /***, and then all the other comments are in there. And basically all this stuff here treated like an HTML, okay? And Javadoc will create a web page out of it. And it will create like a whole website for your program. And there's some keywords in there. You can say @param to basically kind of have like a bold field that's going to show what the parameter is supposed to do. right? So right here, this is going to be one parameter. This is going to be the name of the parameter, which is this right here. And then some explanation for what that parameter is supposed to do. Same thing with the other one. We have a parameter called name here. And yeah, there it is. And then what that thing does, etc., etc., etc. So how do you do that? And this is the official Javadoc from Oracle. And I have my own. If you look at document your code with Javadoc, right? So I have some examples in there, right? So here it is. I have a class called Javadoc, right? .java. In it, I have a constructor, right? And on top of the constructor, I have these the Javadoc comments. Okay. If you know a little bit about HTML, right? You can recognize these tags in there. This is the I makes the text italicized. The U makes this text underlined. Okay. If you don't know HTML, it's very easy. It's not even a language to learn. Okay. It's basically just a way for you to tell how text is supposed to be formatted and arranged on the screen by a browser. Okay. So in there, so I have a constructor, I have a method, right? In that method, I'm going to have some text that is italicized. The BR means insert a new line. Whenever you write HTML, the browser does not distinguish between new lines. If you enter them in new text, you have to manually tell it insert a new line. That's done using the BR tag. Okay, these are all tags, right? Less than some character or a bunch of characters, and then greater than, that's a tag. So this is my opening tag for italicized, and this is my closing tag for italicized at the end. Okay? And then what you have to do is, this is very easily done in Eclipse. When you're in Eclipse, you just go to Project, you click Generate Javadoc, and if you have your methods and your classes formatted with these kind of comments, then it will generate these kind of web pages right here, right? So you can see this picture right here on the bottom. This is what a Javadoc will look like, right? There's my constructor, there's my method. These are the different methods. One is an int, one is a void. If you notice the text here, notice how here it says a method that adds two numbers and returns a sum. That is italicized because I told it to be italicized here. Okay, so it's just a very convenient way for you to document neatly your code. This comes in very useful if you have a really big project with lots of things in it. You don't want to, you want to basically just provide a documentation for whoever's going to be using your program. They don't really need to know the details. You just tell them, okay, these are the different methods, and this is how you're going to be using them. These are the kind of things that we're going to be sending into them, or the kind of things that they're going to be returning, that kind of things. Okay? So that's Javadoc. Any questions? Okay.
How do you use it?
How do you use it? Well,
Like, what's the command to
you just the way I use it is I just use Eclipse. Right. In Eclipse, you go project, and then there's generate Javadoc, and then that creates the Javadoc for you. Okay? All right. So that's basically Javadoc, and let's go to the next thing. Okay, so one little quick thing here, since Mark walked in.
Sorry.
It's all right. You had a question. You don't mind me showing that to the class? All right. So he had a question right here about adding another button. So I'm just going to show this. If you have that issue, maybe other people have it. So what you're doing here is you have a mainframe and a button and a container, and then you're adding, a button to that thing, right? And then the assignment, I think, asks you to do 2 buttons.
Yeah, like add another button.
Okay. Well, the problem is here you're creating the mainframe again, and then making another button, and then adding it to that same mainframe. So the thing is, you're only going to have this one time,
Okay.
right? Only one mainframe, only one container for that content pane, and that is where you're going to be. So basically, you do this one time, you do this twice for 2 different buttons, right?
It could be second B, or would it?
You can call it whatever you want. Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, first B, second B, yes. Then you make the 2 buttons here. You do this one time, and then you just add the 2 buttons twice using this right here.
Oh, so it'd be
Yeah.
comma second B.
Yes. So don't do this.
Okay.
don't do this twice, and don't do this again, right? So only one time you're going to be doing the mnemonic, the tooltip, and the CSIS. Okay, and that's it. So there you go. That was one question. So now let's go back to.
When would you want 2 frames?
Huh?
When would you want more than 1 frame?
Well, if you want 2 windows, 2 separate windows. Yeah, each.
window has its own
Yeah, each
frame.
mainframe is its own little window. Yep. Okay. And by the way, there's also ways for you to add a menu and all kinds of other things. I'm not sure if the book covers that, but it's not. I mean, it's not the most important thing in the world, but you can very easily add a menu. The menu itself is going to be added to the window, to the mainframe window, but it's not going to be added to the content pane. The content pane was like the little black screen underneath the, I guess, the title of the window, the one with the X. Okay, so now let's go look at week 10, the summary. Now we know about the Javadoc. Oh, and I have the Javadoc program in here so you can see it. If you want to, you can just download this thing and look at it, right? So this is the Javadoc that the Java file that I used to generate the Javadoc that is in the example. So you can just download this thing, run it. I mean, generate Javadoc with Eclipse and play around with it a little bit if you like. Okay, so that's that. Now going to the chapter 10. Okay, chapter 10, summary. Okay. Let me download the million fonts because it wants to. Come on. Be nice if once you download this thing once, it doesn't ask you again, but I don't know. Yay. Come on. Okay. So, it's basically going to go the same way as we did before. You're going to do the two-phase thing. First you construct the GUI thing, you add all the buttons, you make sure that it looks the way you want it to look, and then you associate events with those different buttons and whatever else you have thrown on the window. So the first program is multi-buttons Java. So let me go look at that. Multi-buttons Java. All right, here's your multi-buttons Java. Okay, so what is this thing here? And by the way, this might help you since you had to do one assignment that asked you to do multi-buttons. Here it is, right? This is how you do it. So we have one window. That's my JFrame. The variable name is mainframe. We're going to have 3 buttons. One is going to be called message button, one clear button, one exit button. Okay, and I'm giving them each of these a title, right? I create a container. I set layout, right? The layout is going to be what Java is going to use to organize things on the screen. What was the one that you were using? Was it border layout, the one with the north and stuff? Okay, so that's the default run, right? So if you do not specify a layout, if you don't have this part right here, it will default to, I think, border layout. And border layout is that weird layout that you have to tell it, put the thing in north and put it west and south and east, and just bring your compass. So if you don't, this is the flow layout. You can mouse over with Eclipse. And then this one is constructs a new flow layout with centered alignment and a default 5-unit horizontal and vertical gap. Okay, so basically it looks like this. All right, there you go. All right, so we have 3 buttons. If I move them around, the flow layout manager will know to move them accordingly. So that's all built into the flow layout manager. There's different layouts other than the flow layout and border layout. There are grid layout. The grid layout is what you'll find handy for your tic-tac-toe final project. Okay, and what else did I do in there? So I added 3 buttons. These are my 3 buttons. If I click them, nothing happens yet. All right, and I do the mnemonics, which are basically the shortcuts for me to click these different messages. And it's Alt-M. No, Alt. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so yeah, those are the shortcuts. Control Alt M. There you go. Yeah, on the Mac it's Control Alt. On Windows it's just Alt, I think. Okay.
How do we know the layouts they come, what type of layouts are to use? Like, there is a list of them and how they look.
Well, let me see. See that set layout. See if Eclipse shows anything. Layout managers. Oops. I'm trying to see if I can get Eclipse to do it. New. Get layouts. Well, you have to look at the Java webpage. You just Google what are the different layouts, and Oracle will have a nice list of basically Javadoc web pages that show you how the different things work. Okay, but yeah, there's also, it's in the book, I'm pretty sure. So look in the book for the layout managers, probably chapter 10. Okay, hey. All right. So yeah, that's the usual thing. So we added three buttons to the window using a container with a flow layout. We added some shortcuts, set the window size, and then the only event that's associated with this window is that when we click the little X, it knows to close the program, right? So we kind of using that from before. Okay, so that's the only thing. Multi-buttons Java. Now the next one is, step 2 is, now that we have this thing working, we know it looks good the way we want it to, then the next step is we're going to create events. Okay, and it's the same business as before. We have a JFrame, mainframe, that's the main window. We have the 3 buttons. This is my title for the window. These are the texts for all the different buttons. And you can do different things with the buttons, by the way. You can change the color of the text. You can change the size of the buttons. You can change picture backgrounds and all kinds of different things. And Eclipse will help a lot with that if you choose to use it. Okay, if you don't, then you're gonna have to probably search around Google and the Oracle websites to figure out how to use it, or maybe look in the book. Okay, so same thing as before, the 3 buttons, setting the layout, adding the 3 buttons to the window, doing the shortcuts, telling it what the window size is supposed to be, and then I am creating 3 different handlers for each of the buttons. Right? So there's a message button handler class, there's a clear button handler class, and there's an exit button handler class. And they're right here. Okay? So the message button handler class implements action listener, and in there's only the action performed, which means that if something happened to that button, react to it by showing this message, show message dialog, right? Telling it what button was clicked. And the same thing applies for all the different buttons, right? The clear button will tell you the clear button was clicked, and the exit button will tell you the exit button was clicked, and it will exit the program. So there's 2 ways for you to exit the program. One is by closing the window, the other one is hitting the exit button, but based on how we have written this here. Okay, and the actual handlers, so this is an object of the handler class, and I'm adding these objects to my buttons using the add action listener. Okay, so this button is going to have an action listener, so that if something happens to that button, then we're going to perform whatever's defined inside my message button handler class. What's in my message button handler class, again, is just an action performed method, which is built into the Java language, which can detect if something happened to that button, and if so, this is what's going to happen, which is what I wrote, or whatever the book gave you as an example, basically just a message telling you the button was clicked. Okay, if I run this thing now and start clicking on these, there's my first one, clear, and then if I hit the exit button, you have to say OK first, and then the program is going to exit. Okay, which is similar to one of the assignments that you had to do, I think. Right? You hit the OK button, and then the program exits. Okay.
Alex?
Yes.
Just a question about the coding style. Do you prefer the inner class specification, like the way you had it here, because it's cleaner with the code in school, or the anonymous class? Because anonymous
Inner.
class is more
Yeah, no.
add
Mhm.
and there's lines of code, but
Mhm.
it's not as readable.
Yeah, the anonymous class, we're only going to use it for this. Only for like the shortest thing that we need for just the window closing event. Everything else we're going to be using real classes.
So you want us to use interclass?
Yeah.
Interclass specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Make their make individual class for the handling the buttons and these
Is
different
that-
things.
it's more readable, or-
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely more readable. Yeah. Okay. All right. So for our first example, we use a flow layout manager to create a GUI containing 3 buttons, which is this way. Once set, the layout determines the control and controls the sizing and position of components. I already told you that. Table 10.2 provides 3 methods that can be used to influence the sizing of a component, but the manager will only use them as a guideline. So this is multi-buttons. That was that multi-buttons already. This showed you. Okay, now the next one is text components. All right, so the next one is text GUI 1. Let me look at where that is. Text GUI 1 is this. Okay, so text GUI 1 is similar to the other one, except we're adding one extra little thing, which is a J text field. And Eclipse is very nice to tell you what this thing is, right? If you just mouse over the J text field, right? Eclipse will tell you what this thing is. And it's a lightweight component that allows the editing of a single line of text, right? For information on blah blah blah. See how this. So you can click on that. It'll take you to the actual link with the more Javadoc information. Okay, so you can read about this, all kinds of little things, and even has an example of how to do some of these things. Okay, there's a class that extends a text field and some examples of what you can do with it. But we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at this example right here. Okay, so I make a new window. That's my mainframe variable, is new window basically, which has this title. I add my 3 buttons just like I had before, and then I'm going to add a text field. Okay, and the text field is going to have this hello world inside of it, hopefully, when I run the program. I make a container variable C, which is going to be equal to the content pane, so that I can easily add to the content pane, right? And notice that this time I did not specify layout like before here. In the previous example, we did C.set layout for the content pane. So how the information is going to be organized in the content pane is using flow layout. Here I'm not doing that. And because I'm not doing that, right, we're not explicitly specified the default layout manager for JFrame container as border layout. Okay, so this is your border layout. So you have to tell it what you're adding. So this is me adding to the content pane. This is what I'm adding, and this is where I'm adding it at, right? So this is the top part of the window. This is on the left part of the window. This is the center. This is the right one, I guess. Okay, depending on your orientation of your screen, I guess. All right, so then the shortcuts and your set size to set the window size, telling the window to listen to things, and that's it. We haven't associated any events with these different things. So when I run it, it looks like this, right? So my text field is north, right? My message button is here, that's the west, clear button is the center, and exit button is the east. Okay, I personally don't like that layout, but whatever. Okay, so there you go. If you resize this thing, it's not going to respond in the same way that the flow layout did. Right, so each of these layout managers, it interacts with the window in slightly different ways. So, and nothing happens. This is just a program that we have not associated any events with these buttons yet. Okay, so then I close it, and we're going to go to text GUI 2. And what is text GUI 2? Same thing as before, right? We got all these different components, 3 buttons and a text field, the window. Text GUI 2, where are you? Okay. Text GUI 2. Okay, adding the windows again. Right, we're not telling it what layout to use. It will know automatically to use the border layout. We're doing the shortcuts. We're doing the setting the size of the window, telling it what to do when the window is closed, and then my 3 handlers for each of these buttons. Right, the 3 classes that I had already defined. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the property of my text field. Right? So if I click my message button, we're going to change the text for the text field to hello world once again. If I hit the clear button, we're going to empty whatever's inside of my text field's entry area. And if I hit the exit button, just the program exits. Okay, so if I click it and look at this thing, if I hit the clear, it goes away. If I hit the message, there it is, clear message, and then exits the program. Okay, so nothing fancy, just like before. It's minor changes. The only thing we changed was we added a little text box in there. So now you know what text box is. You're welcome to use a text box for your tic-tac-toe. I don't think you need it, but however you want to do it, it's up to you. As long as you have 9 buttons, I'm happy. As long as you're using a 2-dimensional array, I'm happy. And beyond that, as long as the game works, I'm also happy. Okay, I've seen this program written in 200 lines of codes. Well, almost let's say 250. All right. Well, I'm talking about the tic-tac-toe. I've seen it written in 250 lines of code, so that it pretty much tries to beat you and defend against your moves. And I have also seen a basic game of just somebody playing against themselves written in 2,000 lines of code. So it really is a matter of how good you are at programming, how good you are with the analytical thinking to generate a short and easier to understand code. And usually the more math you have under your belt, the better you are at this kind of thing. Okay. The 2 people who did this project with the basically defending and beating the basically the computer playing against you, one was a biochemical engineer from Purdue who took a semester off to teach himself programming, and he had more math than me. And the other one was an applied math student who had as much math as me. Well, pretty much. Okay, so that's that. And I'll be happy to see one of you this semester take care of that. Make it play against you. Make it make its own moves and try to defend. But you don't have to do that. Okay. J text field can be used for input as well as output. So you can change the property of that text. And we have convert temp1 in there. Convert temp1 looks like this. And let me just show you what it looks like before I get it going. Before I tell you more about it. Okay, so I have a couple of extra things in here. Okay, so I have 2 labels now. So 2 labels. And these are my 2 labels, the J label, far label, and then cells label. All right, so this text right here, those are the labels, right? This is me setting them, right? So this is each of these labels, enter Fahrenheit, and the corresponding Celsius. This is my button that says exit. This is my temperature title, temperature conversion. This is my exit button, and then I do the 2 text fields. And notice in here I'm telling it J text field 5. So you could, if you remember from the other one that we just looked at, so the text field, you can specify a string for it to display that string, or you can just give it a number, and if you give it a number, that will be basically the width of your text field area. Okay? And you can play around with these numbers to see how that changes if you want.
Stationary number?
I'm not sure if it's characters. Let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it's not characters. I don't know what the 5 is. Yeah, it's just some kind of a number. Well, in fact, we might be able to mouse over this thing. So JText field, parameters, columns, the number of columns to use to calculate the preferred width. If column is set to 0, the preferred width will be whatever naturally results from the component implementation. So I don't know. Yeah, columns. I guess these are the columns, but it didn't really look a whole lot like columns to me. I was expecting to see 5 characters, maybe if it's uppercase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there you go. No, 6. Yeah. So it's basically how this is 5 uppercase characters. That's the width. If you do another one, the 6th one kind of starts moving away. So yeah.
So that's what can be contained within.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see it, in other words.
Yeah. It's barely, yeah, you can fit a sixth one in there, but it's kind of like starting to shift. All right. So that's the meaning of this 5. It's basically 5 characters wide. Okay. So what else we have in there? So we have my content, mainframe, content pane. We're setting the layout to flow layout this time so that we can just easily add these. Remember, since this is a flow layout, if I do this kind of stuff, it will resize itself accordingly. Okay, that's how this flow layout works. But since we're setting the window size to a specific size that I have, that we have chosen, then it will look kind of nice like this. And what else we have in there? Pretty much the same as before. We have 2 handlers, 2 classes, convert button handler and exit button handler. We're adding the action listeners using objects of these instances of these class types. And this is my convert button handler. So what is the convert button handler? Well, we're going to set how we're going to show these numbers, right? So we're telling it, okay, we're going to have like a thousands separator, and we're going to round this thing to 2 digits. What we're going to do is we're going to type some number in here, like 34, right? And let's go with 32. I can't remember what that was, 32 or 34. Okay, so in string is equal to far field get text. What is the far field? Well, it's this text field right here. So when I say far field get text, we're going to pull this number that I have typed in right here. Okay, then what I'm going to do is that is going to be a string, right? So string, in string. We're going to have to convert that they entered into a number, right? Into a real, some kind of a value. I'm calling it in value, right? Using parse double, just like we've done before. And then you're going to convert this thing to Celsius. Okay, so we're going to do some kind of a math that's going to be stored into the out value variable, and then I say Celsius set text num.format out value. So we're going to format this thing in this format that I specified up here, right? And we're just going to insert it now into this Celsius field. All right, so I hit it, and there's a 0. Any questions?
Non-format value, is that a dot?
Num.format, yeah.
And that's how you would,
You're telling it
that's
we're
how you would pull the other.
yeah, we're telling it we're going to form. This is num, right? This is my num variable, which is a way for you to set how to format the numbers, right? And then we're going to be formatting this number, and that's going to be inserted inside my text field. Okay.
So that num.format is like a method.
Yes, num is the object of the decimal format class, which has a format method, which allows you to format something according to this right here, right? And that something has to be a number of the double type. Yeah? Okay. So, and then you have an exit button handler, which does the same thing as before. He just exits the program. So nothing really, fancy. Okay? In the book, by the way, you will see that's a lot of the examples. And by the way, I recommend type up all the examples in the book, every program, to get a good understanding of how things are working. In the book, it has a mainframe.show. And if you are trying to compile this program in the command line, I'm not sure if Eclipse will do the same thing, but there will be some kind of a warning. I'm not sure if it's a warning or an error message. They'll tell you, oh, there's a deprecated method. Try to compile it with xlint, and then the file name to show where the warning is. And if you do, then it will tell you that there is an issue with this particular method. It's a deprecated method, which is basically one of the older methods that were used by Java that are becoming obsolete. Since this version, they have been replaced by this, set visible, right? Which is why here I have changed it to set visible true, which is probably not what the book's using. I think they're using it in some of the examples maybe, but not in all, or maybe in none of them. Okay? That makes sense? Okay, so that's the convert temperature 1 or 2 or whatever it was. We're in temp 1. Okay, so now exit, Let's have a look at the last one. And that's the most useful one. Okay, so we're gonna have a checkbox, a radio box, right? And what we're gonna learn in this particular checkbox 1 program is how to have checkbox 1. Checkbox 1. So let me show you the thing first, so then we can talk about the code. So this is my checkbox, right? Checkbox example, and all it is we have the mainframe, we have an exit button, we have a label for this text right here, we have a text field which is highlighted right now, we have a checkbox, 2 checkboxes. Okay, checkbox, one is called box italic, the other one is called box bold, and I'm just setting the text in there. So this is my window text, this is my exit button text, this is my label text, this is my J text field, right? So it's 20 columns wide, and I have a label for each of these buttons. One says italic, the other one says bold, right? And then just like before, I'm going to add these to the content pane. So I need to get a container variable going. I need to set the layout on that container. I'm going to add all these different components to the content pane, do my shortcuts, set the size, right? Tell the thing what to do when the window is closed. And then notice now, for the first time, I am actually going to use, well, the exit button handler is just like before, right? It's just the class that exits the button, exits the program, same as before. But notice in here, we have a checkbox handler, C handler is equal to new checkbox handler, and I'm adding that listener to both of my checkboxes. So for the first time now, we're going to have a single class listen to events of 2 different buttons, or 2 different components. So now what we have to do is, and this is going to change slightly from, it's not going to work, you're not going to be implementing item listener for the buttons. I have some hints in there on what to implement for the final project, I mean. But it will work pretty much the same way, that you're going to have some kind of a variable E to detect what was clicked, right? So basically, item state changed, we're going to use item states changed for the checkboxes, right? Because you can either check it or uncheck it. That will be the state changed. The buttons can only be clicked, right? So you either click it or you click it, right? So there's only one thing that you can do. But in here, we're going to be doing item state changed, which is basically the action performed before a checkbox, and it's listening to all the checkboxes that are in my container, or all the checkboxes that I have added this handler to, right? So each of these checkboxes has its own listener, and what we're going to do here is, this is where we identify, right here, this is where we identify which checkbox was clicked. So if E get source is equal to box bold, what is box bold? Well, it's this one, okay? And similarly, if I have, so this is my if, so it's either this button, it's either this checkbox that was clicked, or else the other checkbox was clicked. Okay, so now that the checkbox was clicked, we're going to create a couple of variables. One is called italic font, the other one is called the bold font. And what we're going to do is we're going to detect if my checkbox for bold was selected, then I'm going to change this variable to bold is equal to bold, font is equal to bold. Bold. And then what is this? It's just some kind of a number, right? I think this is a 1, right? So, but instead of you remembering, what number was bold, you just import your, do we have a font in there? I think it's just swing event. I think it might be just built. You don't have to import anything. But anyway, font is just a class that contains all the different, font options, and bold is, just some number. Similarly, this one here is some other number. All right, that one's a 0, that one's a 1. Okay, so there you go. Then we're going to do the same thing for the italic checkbox. We detect to see if that one was the one that was clicked. The else automatically happens when that one was clicked, when the italic checkbox was clicked. Then we check to see if it was selected or unselected. If it was selected, set my italic font to some other number. For italic, it's probably going to be a 1 again. No, it's a 2 now. And then otherwise, set it to plain, which is a 0. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to use both of these variables here to format the text in my text field. All right? My text field's name was tin field. Right? I'm going to set the font. This is the font that I'm going to set. And then the sum of these two numbers is actually going to tell it, it's basically some other number again, which is going to tell it how to format the text. Is it bold? Is it italic? Is it bold and italic? Is it just italic? All right? And it's basically just, this is just how we do it. And this is my font size. And then repaint tells it to, format the text the way we want it to. Okay, so if I go and I do this, hello world, right? This is a plain text. I hit the italic, change this to italic. I unclick it, goes back to normal. This is bold, goes back to normal, bold and italic, and there you go. Okay, any questions? We're good? Okay, so that is basically, in a nutshell, all you need to get started on your final project. So let's have a look at the final project, which is next week. Or maybe the one after. Or maybe the one after. Maybe I should have put it earlier. But anyway, the final project, you could already start on the final project, right? Which is in week 13. I put it in week 13. So even if you do everything else up to that point, 13, 14, 15, 16, you have like several weeks to get this thing done. I also have a video in there that shows you how to do the whole thing. So if you get stuck, look at the video. But don't look at the video unless you absolutely have to, okay? And if you find yourself looking at the video to make the project, then once you're done with the project, do it again so that you can do it without the video. Okay? And what is the project? Well, it goes like this. So you're going to have a GUI, a window with 9 buttons, and I tell you use a grid layout, and the grid layout is another one of those layout managers. And all right, so it takes 2 numbers. One is for the number of rows, the other one is for the number of columns. Use a 2-dimensional array for your buttons. So you're going to make a JButton array like this, right? And you're going to create all the buttons. Use nested for loops to add action listeners to the buttons, right? So you're going to have one for loop, another for loop inside of it, and then using those 2 loops, you're going to be doing this business. Okay, so you're going to have a bij, right, is equal to add action listener, and the buttons handler is the class that's going to handle the events for all the buttons. Okay. Upon a click, the buttons must change either their text or their background image. So when you click a button, you can tell it to change its own text to something else, or you can just make it show a picture. Okay, you can have all the buttons tiled up nice and neat, and then you can have like a one big picture using each little button. So basically what you have to do is you have to kind of get a big picture, Photoshop it into 9 little pieces, and then each of the buttons can be part of the picture. So you can have like a picture when it starts, and then if all of them get clicked, then a different picture shows up after. All right, you don't have to do that. If you want to, you can just use text, right? Just changing the text of the buttons is totally acceptable. When you click a button, it should either be changed to an X or an O, right? Only one time though, right? So if a user selects like the top left button and it's an X, then the next player's turn, the O cannot go back and change that original button. Okay, make sense? Okay. So yeah, and they take turns, and then the only time a turn counts is if the other player has had a chance to, make their choice. In other words, let's say player X clicked the top left button, and then it's player's O turn, and player O tries to click the top left button, but nothing happens because X has already been clicked. That doesn't count as a turn. Only when the player O can select an actual button and change it to an O, does the player turn change to the next player. Make sense? I hope so. Okay, so and the main thing is you're going to the class, the buttons handler class is going to have to implement action listener, and you're going to have to use action performed action event E. In other words, what you saw here, see this right here? So instead of item state change item event E, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have implement action listener. So implement action listener instead of item listener. And this piece, public void item state change item event E, changes to this. Public void action performed action event E. And then using E, you can say E.getSource, and you can see the content, you can see which button it was. Okay? What I would recommend is when you first start the program, or when you first create the array of the buttons, right? Make the array of the buttons. Make each button easy to identify. So let's say give each button a text, right? So the top left button is going to be 0, 0. The one to the right of it is going to be 0, 1. The one to the right of it is going to be 0, 2. Then you go down to the second row. It will be a 1, 0, then a 1, 1, then a 1, 2. And then you can, looking at the text of the buttons, you can identify which button was clicked. Okay? And that's it. So that's one way to do it. And yeah, there you go. Well, maybe I should have shown the picture of it first. Okay? And then if you have my amazing digital media / artistic skills, you can create beautiful pictures like this. And it took me a long time, but I'm sure you can manage. But I did actually have a student one semester did a really cool stuff. She knew how to Photoshop or whatever. It looked really nice. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That you can have one big. So when the whole thing starts initially, you can set the initial buttons to have, each of them has a part of a picture, so it looks like it has a nice picture to begin with. And then when all the buttons have been clicked, you can have other than just the X and the O, you can have a picture behind them. Well, basically the X is on top of a picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is if you want to do the bare minimum, just change these. So this is the original text of these buttons. Just make sure that when the user clicks, the text changes to either an X and an O, and then you don't have to worry about doing pictures at all. Okay? If you want to make this even fancier, you can. So again, at the very least, have the text of these buttons change only one time when the user the proper user's turn is. Make sure that you cannot click a button more than once, or you cannot change an X or a no. Make sure you can find the winner. So the winner is it's either 3 horizontal, 3 vertical, or 3 diagonal. Okay. You can find a winner any way you want. You can use loops. You can just write it one by one if you want. I don't care. But that's what I said. Some students can do this in 200-300 lines of code, maybe even less, and other students might take 2,000 lines of code. Okay, depending on how you do this. What else? And that's the very least. And for more advanced, you can have it try to block you, right? Basically. At the very least, you should be able to play against yourself, like, choose for both players. And otherwise, you can have it, the next level difficulty will be basically try to get it to defend. So if I'm trying to get 3 in a row, it knows, okay, hold on, I'm going to block you here. Okay? And then the next step after that in complexity is trying to get it to beat you. Right? So not only does it block you, but now it tries to connect 3 in a row also. Okay? But you don't have to do that. And again, if you want to do something else instead of this, that's fine too. Just make sure it's a GUI. Make sure it has a 2D array of some sorts. Okay? And that's the final project. And then if you choose to pretty much just do chapters 1 through 10 and the final project, you have an A in the class. Okay? You can go all the way to chapter 12. Without the final project, you have a B in the class. Okay, so you need to do the final project to get an A in this class. Okay, and you can pretty much start working on the final project as soon as you're done with chapter 10, and then work on that for the rest of the semester, and you got an A. But it will be good if you do chapters 11 and 12 to learn a little bit more. Okay? Questions? Okay. So I think that's probably all I have. Oh, a jar file. So I'll show you how to make jar files later. Jar file is like an executable file, kind of. Basically, you don't have to compile it and run it. It's like a zip file that has all the classes already pre-compiled in it, and all you need is you just basically double-click it and it runs. But you need Java virtual machine installed before the thing runs. Because remember, Java is an interpreted language. You need an interpreter to run the thing. This is not a compiled language like C++, where when you make the program, you just click it and it works without anything. All right? This thing needs an interpreter, which is the Java runtime environment, the JRE. Okay? Not the JDK. JDK is only if you're going to be creating software. JRE is if you want to run the thing. That's the virtual machine. Okay? And then there's some more other things that I'm going to tell you next week, but I think that's all there is for week 10 that I wanted to say. Are we good? Any questions? Okay. So that's all I have for today. Email me your questions. If you have them, come see me in the office. You know the drill.